Well, hello there, City Skylines enthusiasts, and welcome back to Flyvox Talks Cities, the podcast based around our beloved city building simulation, City Skylines 1 and 2. My name is Flyvox, I'm your host for today, and with me is the one and only Slay3K. Hey Slay, what's up?
Hey man, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. Please, tell us a few words about yourself.
All right. Well, I've been playing cities for years now, like many of us have. I came from the old Sim City days, loved that back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then when I got back into PC gaming, in the mid, 2010s, I guess is how you say that. City Skylines was there and picked that up. And then shortly after I had started playing City Skylines, I became a Twitch streamer and then eventually a YouTuber as well. So I've been making content now for 5.5 years roughly. Mostly streaming, but there's been more so a focus on YouTube content over the last this past year, really. And yeah, that's kind of the path to getting me here.
Nice, nice. Sounds really amazing. So, talking about City Skylines, starting it off with City Skylines 2, of course, how did you experience that announcement trailer, the non gameplay trailer for City Skylines 2, and what did you feel while you were watching it?
I think I just happened to be on Twitter or someone said something somewhere, but I think I caught it on Twitter. I want to say like I was just in my own little bubble and found it and watched it. And it's exciting to hear that it was exciting to hear that there was a new one coming. But at the same time, I felt like the announcement trailer was in no way, shape, or form very indicative of what the product would be. Because I mean, I've worked in marketing for several years. And I knew pretty quickly that this was just a marketing video because there was commentary and stuff like that posted elsewhere, of like, oh, is it going to be the Unreal Engine? And I'm like, kind of doubt it. That'd be a stretch from coming from Unity. And there wasn't really anything that talked about gameplay. And I've become, I guess, a little bit jaded in the last couple of years with games releasing without a whole lot of gameplay footage. So I remember folks coming in my chats and streams and stuff like that talking about like, oh my gosh, did you see this in the announcement trailer? Like, I wonder if that's what's gonna be. I'm like, guys, calm down. Like, this is this is a teaser. Like it's something to get you excited about. Like the most you could take away from that was the fact, okay, the seasons, obviously, and then a logo. You know what I mean? That's what I sort of boiled it down to. So maybe not the most exciting take on seeing it, but I guess my expectations have been changed over what many of us have experienced in the gaming community, right? With games releasing over the last several years that have just been unfinished or having just materials come out that almost feel a little bit misleading once you have the final product in your hands. So I think it was careful excitement. More so, it was just like, okay, at least they're saying it's on the way.
Yeah. That's the fair point, actually. I mean, we know how it works, right? We know
Yeah.
they're teasing. Obviously, it's said in the trailer, not actual gameplay footage. I personally, I love that. I was like thrilled with excitement when I saw it.
Yeah.
And of course, I also noticed that not gameplay, but like I was like, oh my god, it looks amazing. Of course, I guess I was
Yeah.
blinded by it, but I was so stoked. I was super hyped about it. Everything. I mean, and the trailer is amazing, right?
Right.
I found the trailer was really well made, and of course, I had to break the trailer down, and
Mhm.
try to analyze it and come up with little bits and pieces like, oh, we got there's some trees on this side of the road, maybe that's tree lined roads. Then we have bollards on this side of the road, and like there's some points actually. If I go back to that video, I should make like a follow up video. If I go back to my video from back then, I actually got some points right, which were in the game then. So that was
There
kind
you
of
go.
interesting. Yeah, it wasn't too much. Obviously, it wasn't too much, but it was really fun to do, and it was interesting to see what features were implemented in the game later on.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of investigation into like what does this mean and stuff like that. I was just careful excitement because again, like I think we've had so many games lately that almost take a year to get where we want them to be or where we expect them to be as consumers. And then part of it's just the marketing background, I think, for me is like I'm kind of looking at it and I'm like, I need gameplay. And I think that was like the first thing I said when people started talking about it. I was like, it's not gameplay. I want gameplay. I got to see gameplay
Right, right.
because ultimately like they can post this and it's going to be exciting. And again, I was excited in the sense of like, oh, okay, we have confirmation that there's progress, right? There's something on the way. Okay, finally we get because for some reason I feel like cities the crew over at Colossal Order tend to operate with a decent amount of secrecy around what's
Yeah.
going on, and
Yeah.
even from the perspective of being someone that had early access, like I still feel like they operate with a lot of secrecy. So I can understand some of it, but it was one of those things. Like I think I said last year around the equal time that the announcement trailer came out. So it was like spring of last year. I was like, they could just post a logo. Like that's all we need is a logo, and then everyone will feel a little better.
Right, right. The good thing is that the first gameplay trailer
Mhm.
followed shortly after, or not, we didn't have to
Yeah.
wait long for that. What did you think about when you then saw actual gameplay footage when that trailer was released? Like the slowly opening shot of the highway intersection zooming out. I thought it was amazing. What were your thoughts?
I think that was much more appealing for me, and I was excited at that point. That kind of gave me at least an expectation in terms of visuals, which are often really important for me, aesthetics and things like that. I'm somebody that the way I play is very much focused on realism. So to see a game that appeared realistic more so than your vanilla style of graphics and the overall appearance in Cities 1, that was where I think I felt the most initial excitement, and then I think getting a look at something that I've been waiting on for I don't know how many years now, because we've been talking about it, so many of us creators and with our audiences and stuff like that have been discussing, what would the next one look like, what do we want in the next one, and just finally seeing something that looked like a generation forward from Cities 1 was really kind of surreal in a way. And I think, yeah, that's probably where I got the most excited leading up to its eventual release, was to see it actually functioning. I would say that when a lot of people got excited about the announcement trailer, that didn't really happen for me until the gameplay trailer.
Fair point. Yeah. And surreal, what you just mentioned, that's actually a good word
Yeah.
because I felt the same. It's like, this can't be this. Like, I love
Right.
City Skylines so much. And it's just like there we can see actual gameplay of Cities 2. And I was like blown away. Also, again, this trailer once again was very well
Yeah.
made. I loved everything, the ambience that came with it, the music, that led up to certain moments. One moment that stood out to me was like the highlight of the trailer where it was like it's showing off the city and it said a great skyline and the cool city and everything is nothing without you,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
player.
Yeah.
And that moment, it was like goosebumps. I think I had some, I almost cried because it was so epic and it was so good. And the focus on the player, I love that trailer so much. It was really, really amazing.
We also saw some of those base mechanics. I think you got an idea for like modular buildings and a few other things in there that were really exciting. I think I can't remember if we knew like mixed use. I'm trying to recall if mixed use was kind of demonstrated in some way, but there was things in there that also like again gave you new generation of city builder kind of like, hey, this is where it's headed, which was really exciting. And that was, I think that really made an impact on me because I've been wondering in some capacity, like, what's going to change? Like I don't know how much you can do with a city builder because we
Right.
just haven't
Right.
experienced it. You see pockets of cool tech or things like that in this game or that game. There's another game coming out, I think next year, called Manor Lords, which is a city builder kind of in a way, but it's got politics and things like that. And
Oh,
I guess it's medieval based, and that had some cool tech around how you can draw out houses and stuff like that, which actually, in some ways, are incorporated into cities too, with how you do specialized industry,
right.
and you can draw out their zone. Well, imagine doing that with like individual homes. So you can give every house has like a yard, and then you can set up a little bit more of a purpose for each house too. Like you can give it kind of a dedicated sort of role in the community. So it's just always interesting to me to be able to see, okay, this is the next gen city builder, I guess, and that was exciting to be able to get a look at some of those little mechanics.
100% agreed. Yeah. So you've already mentioned early access, and we
Yep.
have been given early access. What was your first playing experience or like your initial impression when you first opened up City Skylines 2?
I think I was a little overwhelmed. Chirper was going off. The radio had ads. So there's a lot happening really quickly. It's such a large game in a sense, in terms of just all the new mechanics and the feel of it. It's not foreign because obviously zoning kind of operates the same, and then there's a lot of, drawing a road kind of operates the same. It's just there's more, in some cases, technical aspects to doing those things. So I think at first I was a little overwhelmed with how things operated, and some of the new buildings and some of these new little tools and stuff like that that are featured. I would say, and I talked about this before, is that Cities 2 is very intuitive, but to some degree, you also lose a little bit of control. And in some capacity, I also found a little bit of a frustration thing. And some of this also stems back from me and how I, have always played Cities 1 was, pretty modded. And so I like to have certain freedoms. And when I was playing early Cities 2, it's like I was kind of hitting walls in certain areas. So it's taken some time to get used to. So my first experience, I guess, again, overwhelmed, but also trying to figure out where I sort of fit in terms of how I build in that game. And that has been a little bit of a learning curve for me, especially because it's, vanilla gameplay, right? So there are going to be limitations. And I feel like Cities 2, with things like its overlap indicators and stuff like that, can be a little bit frustrating for somebody that's used to planting like way too many pieces of grass in one area. So there were definitely like good. It was a little bit mixed, and it was early access too, and there were updates that obviously helped some of the performance to some degree after that. But it was a little bit of a mixed bag. I think I was excited because at the time too, I was looking forward to where it could go. Because what I found very quickly in early access is that this was not a sequel in the sense of a continuation of a story, as much as it was a sequel in the context of like creating something that was a new platform to build off of. And I think in some ways, I think a lot of folks may have gone in with the expectation of it kind of taking everything in Cities 1, right, and porting it over to a new platform. And that like wasn't the case. So that was a little bit unexpected, but something that I talked a lot about in some of my early access time was that, hey, we have to look at this a little bit differently. And I was definitely somebody that thought like the airport DLC, for example, one of the later DLCs for Cities 1
Yeah.
was going to be some of those mechanics where you could draw out your terminals was going to be something we'd see in Cities 2. As a matter of fact, it's not, at least not yet.
Not
So I
yet.
found like little things like that I had sort of had to reset my expectations a little bit.
I feel that 100%. Yeah, it was like the same for me. Overwhelming is actually the perfect word. And funny story, actually, because when we got all these amazing Dev Diary and Dev Insight videos, I decided to join forces with Joy Build Cities and create these videos around those Dev Insights and
Mhm.
Dev Diary videos, breakdown, reaction initial and breakdown, see features, what could that mean for the game later on. And of course, with those videos came the PDF document where everything was listed in detail. Like everything that was in that video was in written form, but in more detail. And we
Yeah.
went through these documents and we highlighted everything that we wanted to talk about in the videos. And they were very well received. And I felt like, oh my God, I'm learning so much about this game. Before I even
Yeah.
opened the game, of course, I didn't have it at the time. I felt like I've learned so much about the game. I've very, very confident, maybe overconfident, because also like, okay, City Skylines, I've been playing it since 2017 when it dropped for consoles first. I got this, right? It's
Yeah.
Cities 2. It's like exactly what you mentioned. They took everything from Cities 1, but they made it better, right? So I opened the game and I couldn't remember like anything. I didn't know anything basically. I
Yeah.
was like, wait, where's my power? How do I connect power? And I was like, oh my, it's under the roads. And I'm like, God damn, what? It's
Yep.
like,
Yep.
I felt so silly because like, I don't know, I was overconfident. I opened the game. I was like, I got this. Let's go. Cities 2, super hyped. And yeah, quickly found out it's not just a revamped City Skylines 1. It's like feels like a completely different game, just some familiar
Mhm.
aspects, as you also pointed out. So I had to learn that as well. And so my first, like after, I don't know, about 50, 60 hours of gameplay, I mentioned that the other day actually on one of my live streams. I felt like I feel like I've had an epiphany with the game after like 50, 60 hours of playtime, and that is basically just completely go away from your City Skylines 1 mindset, like
Yeah.
the start of your city, the way you build, the way you plan, the way you like everything, right? I don't want to be in that City Skylines 1 mindset anymore. And that's when it started clicking a lot better for me. Like I was very
Right.
when I got the game initially, I wasn't too fond of it, right? I was like, oh my God, this is not for me, right? Because I also don't come from like a simulation genre of I've never played simulation games, and I just found City Skylines 1 through a coincidence and just fell in love with it, right? So that's like the only game like I play. I've just do like, platformer games or FPS
Mhm.
games, stuff like that. But Cities was like the first simulation type game And so I was like, okay, it doesn't feel like I'm not having fun with this, and that's not good. So I
Yeah.
kind of pushed through. We were allowed to do the initial 3 videos. They were
Mhm.
heavily limited, of course, with timing, with progression, and I felt like I had to really push myself to get through these videos and not to just give up on the whole thing. But
Right.
now, again, after like a couple of hours, like for sort of 50, 60 hours in the game, feel a lot better in terms of, okay, I'm slowly but surely starting to know what I'm doing, sort of.
Mhm.
And that was interesting to me. That was like this turning point. And after that, when I just detached myself from City Skylines 1 mindset, it felt much better to play with the game. And that's I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, I think it took me. I don't know. I think my early access videos were so much like the first one was very much a discussion of like what is here, what are the basic things, because I felt like there was going to be a lot of traffic driven to the fact that people wanted to know what existed like in this new platform. Because I think many of us were obviously going to highlight features and mechanics and things like that, and I obviously went in very heavy with like my light opinions on each thing as quickly as I could in those, in that restricted time frame. But what I also found is that I wasn't really advancing my gameplay style very quickly. Kind of, similar to what you're suggesting too. Like it took you, 50 or so hours to break some of maybe the habits you had in Cities One, and I definitely that's relatable. I have found that leaning on Cities One experience for how I'm going to build or how I'm going to shape my city just hasn't really translated well, or not in like the full capacity. I don't really know how to explain it, but I felt like when I started building in Cities Two, like nothing seemed to kind of materialize the way I thought. And I don't know if that's because I got into the habit of like, Cities One, I'm going to plop down most of my buildings and I'm going to shape things and design a city versus grow a city. So I've had to take a step back. And I think that's probably the area that's been the most focus for me is figuring out how to grow a city that eventually is going to look like I, maybe plop down some of these buildings and kind of construct it the way I would have in Cities One, a later, game cycle. And to some degree, I feel like I found that in some spaces, but it's definitely taken me past early access. I had to actually kind of stop building and you're sort of vanilla, hey, start from scratch and start. I actually started a city where it was everything unlocked, which I know some folks can be like, well, there's no challenge there. It's like, well, there's a challenge for me in the sense of like trying to figure out what are all the in-game pieces that I have that are going to show up as I build, but I want them now. And then I'm going to like reverse engineer how I did it. So that's something that has given me way better perspective on what I'm building instead of just trying to force myself to grow everything, zone and wait, and then just have your normal progression of life cycle. And that's what has finally given me a little bit better perspective of how to build in the game and kind of and more so enjoy Cities too, I think, for what it has to offer.
Right, right. Yeah, that sounds good. Was that something that stood out the most to you in the game? Like the realization, okay, I have to completely detach myself from City Skylines 1.
Yeah, because again, I played so modded. So like arguably like if you always I feel like if you always played vanilla Cities 1, like you were probably in a decent spot to pick up on Cities 2, especially if you were, a builder that focused on like realism or, maybe not photorealism, but realistic layouts and stuff like that. Like I feel like I would feel from my perspective like you'd probably have a leg up on me, you know what I'm saying? Like whereas for me, like I plop down almost everything. The only thing I would typically not plop in Cities One was like houses, but I used district themes and styles and stuff like that to control what was there. So when I got to Cities Two, I'm like, oh yeah, zoning, that's a thing. That's my only option. So it became a little bit of a struggle. That was where I had to like detach because again, I was leaning on, for Cities Two for so long, mods and assets to create what I wanted to create. And here it's like I'm relying on the game to make a lot of choices. And still to this day, in some of my YouTube stuff I've done, in some of my streams, like I'm trying to find ways of like making things not be just blocks of zones. Because it's easy to get in that habit of like, oh, city block, fill it.
Oh,
Just oh, another
100%.
city block,
Yeah.
fill it. So I've been having to like that's I think where my detachment has had to happen is like looking at it to make cities that look just a little bit better than maybe what I would have done early on and like trying to advance my style of play faster.
Yeah. Yeah. Same actually with demand zone a block. There we go. Demand
Right.
zone a block. And once I got again, detached myself from that mindset of thinking like that, it just felt so much better for me.
Yeah,
It felt so much better.
I've almost like started to ignore the demand meter. Like through part of the life, like, you know, your milestone stuff like that early on. Like I know where I need to get. I know how to get there. But for the most part, when it's asking for industry, I'm like, nah, just wait. It'll
Yeah,
be okay. You
yeah,
know, oh, you want low density. So does everybody else. Just wait. It'll be okay. You know, and some of that also came from the fact that like I have played enough now to understand like where the end goal is, and I've also played that unlocked all, so I see what I can build at the end game. Right, I see more of a path to getting where I need to be. So that's definitely shaped how I'm building in like at the forefront. Like
yeah.
if you, it's kind of funny because I'm working on a YouTube series. The video, like the series in the city, is called Cedarburg, and in those I'm talking about things I'm learning and trying to do some like casual tutorial style things. But if you watch it, and then if you were on my stream a couple weeks ago, you'd see like realizations that I was having on stream that I then needed to go back in the videos and change. Like, you
Oh,
know, like in the city, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go change how I just laid this out. And so I've sort of documented this sort of change of building, like, you know, things like suburbs. Oh, I'm going to do these a little bit differently, you know, on moving forward. So I've had to update that and plan for that as I've been working on the YouTube series. But it's just been kind of an interesting learning experience.
yeah, yeah. I could, for me as well, 100%.
Yeah.
So, in terms of your overall field, how does Cities 2 compare to Cities 1?
That's a loaded question. I would say I think it's so hard to compare because again, I don't really feel that Cities 2 was quite where it needed to be released. I know plenty of people are going to enjoy it over the next, you know, however long until let's say in a year the game is going to be maybe where some of us feel like it should have been released at. You know what I mean in terms of its condition.
Yeah.
So we're just going to use a year. I can see a lot of folks saying it's fine where it is now in the this month and next month and maybe on release even. But I do think that once we have more performance enhancements and things like that, that we're going to see improvements. And then I think there are things that exist even in dev mode, playing with that are going to really potentially give this game so much more room to be what it could be, or I guess to live up to its potential.
Mm-hmm.
That's not saying it can't live up to its potential. It's just like I don't know if it's there yet. I think it is a great foundation, and it's obviously way more robust than Cities One,
Yeah.
which has me very excited. And it's visually impressive, especially like when you get on the camera mode and you're looking around and you got some sunlight lens flare happening. Like it's gorgeous. Cities One, I didn't play it at the very forefront, and so and I know we'll talk about it more later, so I won't dive too deep into it. But Cities One, I wanted to play with the mods, and so that's what I leaned very heavily on through the majority of me playing that game. And you know, it would take 3 or 4 mods to get it to look something close to what you have in Cities Two, like base game, in terms of just some of the visuals and clarity and the colors and stuff like that. So I thought that when Cities 2 came out, it's like, okay, we've got this really great, you know, platform to operate with. It's a good foundation, but it was missing a lot of the bells and whistles that I had in Cities 1, not just from mods, but like there were even like very simple tools that were added in Cities 1 late, like the zoning selector.
Right.
Had that been incorporated on release in Cities 2, I think you would have appeased a lot of people because of, you know, like breaking the zone and grids and stuff like that, and how kind of frustrating that can be for some who are, you know, are looking for perfect grids. It would have cleaned up some stuff. And there are things obviously like, you know, prop line tool was a mod that I really thought would be incorporated.
Oh,
I didn't
same.
Yeah, I
Same.
thought that that would be in there. I thought goofy stuff like growing trees. I know that there's been there's a lot of very passionate people that are like, let the trees grow. And I'm like, I'm just saying I want an option. I'm not saying it has to be this way. Like, I just would like to place a fully grown tree and be done with this, you know, spot and see what it really is going to look like. Like, I want that instant gratification of seeing it complete. But there are small things that really have made it a little bit harder for me to enjoy at the very beginning of this game because they're not the quality of life things, or these little features just aren't incorporated. Things that I really thought were like, these aren't complicated pieces to have. I don't think. I'm not a programmer, but these can't be that difficult to add. And I think that has kind of dampened a little bit of the perspective I have on Cities 2. And again, I think it could get there. I know mods will help. I really thought we were going to have mods day one. So while I had early access, maybe not day one, but shortly after, I think was the verbiage that I heard. So I really thought that even if the game isn't quite where I want it to be from a vanilla standpoint, the mods will be there in a couple weeks or in a month or whatever, and we'll be good to go. Because we can, those folks are super dedicated, so they'll they're gonna fix whatever they want to fix.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case right now. So I think there are just things that, like, I think some things that maybe the devs focused on, maybe weren't all the things that the community wanted, or it just something was misaligned. And in the end, I think it'll be a great game down the road. But unfortunately, I don't think it lived up to the expectation many of us had upon release, at least not yet.
I gotta agree with you to 100% on this one.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the negative. I don't want to be negative. That's just
No, 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 but it's fair points. It's fair points. You can't say it any other way, because that is something I 100% agree with. Some, even in like light versions, but some mods I thought would be like, we have the TMPE light version with the road services, right? You
Mhm.
can disable crosswalks, you can disable left turns, right turns, straightway, but you can't do it for individual lanes
Right.
yet. It's probably going to be a thing in the future, but I mean, like that couldn't have been like, again, with the same as in the same vein as the prop line tool, that couldn't have been too hard to implement. And I have no idea about programming, or I've never, I'm not a game dev, I've never released a game. I don't know how these things work, how much
Mhm.
effort, how much time, how much money it takes to do something like that. But these simple, it, to me, it seems from the outside, it seems like a line tool, prop line tool, is super simple to implement, right? And
Mhm.
they've proven it for the road services, which I view as like a TMPE light version. But why not individual lanes, which would help so much with traffic? No, you could only do like, I want to pick the
Yeah.
lanes to do that. The small little things like that. I do agree on that, and we'll see where the game will be. But I also have to agree on the part that it's not a letdown, but it's kind of like a lot of opinions were like, it's gonna be more than it is right now. So I
Right.
I do understand there is some backlash. I don't know if you would call it controversy around the game, but a lot of folks are like, okay, this is really bad, and they don't like the game, they don't want the game because of certain things that are not in the game, or it was just too much hype around it, or people got sucked into the hype too much. I don't know.
I think a lot of folks jumped into reading, how do I put this? I was very like on streams and stuff like that when folks like we would talk about whatever the dev diary was that week, and
Right.
talk about features or look at a video, or whatever it was that we could to see where the game was heading, like what was incorporated and stuff. And there were a lot of folks that seemed to be very focused on random odds and ends and what that was going to be like, or they something in the background. And I tried to dampen expectations in a way of like, let's just wait and see, because we just don't know. Like, we're seeing videos of it, we're seeing some manipulation of things, and something's happening, but you're not ever going to get the full picture until we have it in our hands.
Yeah.
And what I noticed from like just even posting like images on Reddit when we were still in early access and I was able to make, a couple posts like that, the volume of feedback that was nitpicking over every single thing. Like, you're not going to appease everybody, but the negativity then turns into like this snowball effect. I remember like one of the first images I posted from Cities 2 on Reddit, on the Cities Reddit, was like the feedback I got instantly was like, there's no corner buildings. There's no corner buildings. What are we going to do?
Oh.
There's no corner buildings. I'm like, oh my God. Like, what are we doing? Like, just look at what we have. Like, look at what we have, though. Like, it's not, it's okay. It's okay. And that is a microcosm for a lot of things. Folks jumping on the way certain buildings look. Folks were looking at my row houses like, those don't look like North American row houses. And it's like, okay, what do you? There's a lot of buildings in City One that didn't look like, the nuclear reactor
Yeah.
didn't look like a real nuclear reactor, right? Like, how far are we going to go down this road? But there were a lot of folks getting caught in this kind of train of just, I guess, negativity around the
Mm,
game, and I
mm.
think it definitely snowballed and made it very difficult from a content creator's perspective, honestly, to even talk about the game, to even make the videos. Like, I think that became the harder part. Like, I wasn't super worried about the time constraints or the milestones as much as it was dealing with some of the comments. That became an interesting experience for me because I don't think I've seen anything like that in the 5 years and 5.5 years that I've been doing this. Was the volume of those sort of just people, really, really making some bad takes or not having the game, not having touched it, making judgment.
I just want to touch on something that you just now said, because
Mhm.
that was something that like I've had some interactions with some people as well about like people that were not just stating like, oh, there's this and that is wrong with the game and I don't like it, and then that's done. But there's like people that are like constantly literally shit talking the game on every occasion, like even if the conversation was, oh, look at this screenshot, the same as you, look at this cool screenshot, and then look what I captured here, and then, oh, but in the background, look at that, and they're always trying to drag down the conversation, drag down the game. I was like a handful of users, I just like, well, do you have these issues when you're playing the game, or like what's when it was
Yeah.
released, and they just respond, well, I don't have the game. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
but why do you constantly like just if you don't want the game, don't go to a City Skylines 2 forum and talk. Like, if you don't
Right.
want it, then just stay clear of it. But it just felt like that snowball effect, what you mentioned, it felt like people just it felt like people were just there to complain for the sake of complaining.
Yeah.
So, and that was something that really also, as a content creator, dragged me down. You didn't even want to go into these places anymore and talk about the
Yep.
game on a normal level. Critique is fine. I know there's so much stuff about Cities 2 that I think, or that I hope, will be improved someday, because I think it's not there yet. But you can have healthy discussions about it. You can talk about it. You can share screenshots and point out something beautiful in the game, because as you already said, Slay, the game is gorgeous, right? There's
Yeah.
no, you can't go around that fact. With the camera tools, it's just amazing, visually stunning. And you can have your opinion on if you don't like the game, if you don't like certain aspects of the game, but coming into every single conversation, trying to drag it down, it was exhausting. It was exhausting dealing with these people every time you were like, oh yeah, but that will probably be fixed later, or that's a known bug, or
Mhm.
whatever. Like, oh, look at the fanboys here defending the game. I'm like, like, oh my god. And I just I just left the conversation. It's just like,
Yeah, I saw comments to creators. I think I had someone ask me at one point, like, you're paid by Paradox to be
oh,
positive or something like that. And I'm
what?
like, no, I mean that would be great, but
Yes.
no, I'm not. Like it just it was so wild. I also have never experienced that much like dislike or disdain. I don't know which word to use towards creators that just had early access. It was very strange to me that me having early access was apparently an issue. Like I got asked multiple times, "How did you get early access?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I didn't know that was like something you did you watch the video? Like, or you just did you just show up to make the comment?" Anyway, I thought all of this like just the snowball effect of negativity was really tough to deal with, and to pierce through that and create content was difficult, obviously. And then it obviously was going to continue to compile and snowball as it came to release. And I think many people have gotten through some of that and found a game that they at least can start learning the mechanics and playing with. And unfortunately, we're finding some of the balancing things that early access really, that the handful of us at the forefront that were, and it wasn't really a handful, but the group of us that were making, early access content weren't going to see in its entirety until later, with like how things progress through cities longer term.
Yeah.
Everything like, the postage that they've addressed recently in a word of the week and how some of that operates and some of the balancing and things. And we're seeing a lot of that come to light where they need to post fixes, but I'm not as concerned about some of those. I'm not so worried about those minor like mechanics and things like that that can be fixed with balancing and some adjustments. I think there's just a lot of features that should have been incorporated in the game that would have made a lot of folks really, really excited. Basic, fundamental like things, like you mentioned, having the ability to adjust specific lanes with some of the tools we already have. They're in the game. We just need more clarity, and that gets to the point too that I made earlier about some things are so intuitive, but we lose like some fundamental controls in some way. Some things just don't operate the way that would make better sense if I could control the lanes. Like we have all this data being compiled on the back end, in terms of who, like, what all these Sims want to do daily. They have
Yeah.
lifespans, they have all this information, but I can't change this one lane.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of
Come
goofy to me.
on.
Yeah.
100%. But yeah, as you like, I'm like, that's something line tool, the individual lane selection. That is something where I'm like, okay, that's going to be a thing in like a base game thing. I'm thinking they're going to have like, I'm thinking that could be a base game thing. I'm not sure if we're going to need mods for these little things. And if so, like, I don't really mind because
Yeah.
I already said to myself, like, okay, I'm going to mod the hell out of this game, probably, to get to a state where the experience is more related to Cities 1 modded, if I can capture that again. But this time with Cities 2, I don't think it's a bad thing as of yet that we don't have mods in City Skylines 2, because that was the big plus for me for City Skylines 1, because I was a console player when it came out. I had to learn it vanilla before I was
Mhm.
able to, like, after 2-3 years, I think I got a decent computer. And then I was able to mod the game and play with mods, and then I could learn the mods. So I'm glad that I kind of split that up, that experience, going vanilla first, learning that for a year or for 2 years, and then knowing the game well enough. And then I was like, okay, let's try out some mods. So that's kind of cool. But I think that is not a bad thing as of yet that we don't have mods yet. I thought they would be here sooner, same as you. I thought so,
Yeah.
but it's okay for me. Of course, there's some things I really, really want. Line tool comes to mind, a tree growth mod or whatever, like planting grown trees, but it will come over time. And for now, I don't feel too bad about it because it gives me the chance to just learn the game vanilla, and which is good because as I've already experienced after the 50-60 hours, I was like, okay, now I get it. I'm starting to get it, right?
Yeah. I don't think it's like a long-term negative from my perspective. I do think though, with the game sort of released in the condition that it was, that it would have been very beneficial, especially for how folks would have felt about it upon release.
Hmm.
Right? Because then it's like you could have argued that, oh, we can, throw this mod in or this mod in, and it's like, okay, bam, we got these couple of tools we thought were going to be base game. They're not in base game right now. Maybe they'll get added later, but at least we have something to operate with. And I think it would have given folks that were kind of judging the game more harshly a little bit more leeway with it. That's the only area where I think it became a little bit of a negative not to have that available.
Fair point, actually. Yeah. So, in the state as it is right now, what is something that you enjoy most about City Skylines 2?
Ooh, mixed use buildings.
Oh,
That's yeah. I know that seems totally like that's very specific and kind of random. That is definitely my favorite thing to have in the game because I tend to focus on like North American cities, and mixed use buildings were always something I talked about wanting. And the one thing that I would always try to download from the workshop or buildings that appeared at least to be mixed use buildings, and to have that incorporated is exciting. I love the buildings. I'm able to utilize those to create kind of transitions from lower parts of the town to the downtown epicenters where you have taller buildings and things. They fill in a lot of spaces for me. So I'm really excited to have those incorporated. They look really great too. And they also operate really well on corners. Imagine that. Um, that is probably one of my favorite things to have in there though.
cool, cool, cool. What is something that you're not too fond of?
Let me think. I wish. Okay, this is going to be kind of two part. I wish there were easier ways to do roads. How do I phrase this? I wish zoning operated a little bit differently. I feel like it is still a little bit archaic. Like it's the same sort of functionality that we had. The fact that the lines break so easily and stuff was something that I thought we'd see improvements on in this one. And like I said, there's all this intuitiveness, but then it's just like, why is the zone breaking in that one little strip right there? You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
the
Oh,
blocks are next
yeah.
to each other, it's just slightly off. It's like, come on. That's where I would expect like something to kind of say, no, we get it. We know you're trying to do a block. We fixed it for you. Just some little AI integration there to be like, oh, it's so close. It's basically the same. There you go. We fixed it. The stuff like that. The other part of it too would just be a little bit more around the zoning in terms of how it populated that space. I see a thing with like the specialized industry where you can, and I brought this up with Manor Lords, like you can paint the area, but at the same time, that feels so elementary in terms of how it operates because it just grows stuff in that space. You have no control over what it grows. You can't put roads in it. I see vehicles moving in that area, but I can't put pathing in. So you
Right.
like lose some control over that. But that is a very neat feature if applied to other things. What if you could shape, what if you put down a building like a house, right? And then you shape its yard because all the props and elements are there in cities too. Like it's all built, but we can't access it, unfortunately. So give me the opportunity to like, draw out the area that the house should exist or something like that and just have some like kind of really, really next generation sort of ideas around how some zones can work. And I think that would be really cool. I also thought that like, shopping malls and stuff like that. Like, what if this was something I brought in, I talked about after airport DLC. Like, what if when you draw out terminals in that airport DLC for Cities 1, what if you could use that in Cities 2 to do like shopping centers, like rows of buildings that could sort of, auto scale or something like that to be like a little shopping center.
Oh, neato.
I thought that's kind of the direction we were going. And then I was just kind of bummed to see it. Okay, it's not intuitive enough to know to not break the zones up. And then also there's some of these features you introduced into Cities 1 that just aren't here. And which feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity.
Agreed. I think for the zoning, they probably thought the grid tool would be used more. I don't think the zoning squares or the zoning grid breaks up in the grid tool. I don't think so. I
Well,
haven't
maybe it
seen it
doesn't.
yet. I don't
I
know
draw out all
because
my own grids, I guess.
yeah,
So
I know we have the feature. I've used it like twice, and I also do my own grids. Yeah, but like there's tips and tricks, like no guidelines, but it doesn't always work with the zoning grids. I do understand that point 100%. And yeah, like the biggest thing for me is the lack of an actual line tool. So many times I'm placing bush after bush or tree after tree. The human prop line tool, like God, my hand hurts, right? And
yeah.
it's just like something to do off camera. You can't really like you can crack that joke like once or twice, but then that's it, right? And it just
Yeah.
feels like such a little thing that could be implemented with ease. I don't understand if it has something to do with the mechanic that it's actually a resource, the wood, because the trees have to grow, of course, like that would be
Yeah.
cheating the forestry industry. But like I don't know, but yeah, I felt like that was something like, oh my god, please just give me that. I just
Yeah, I got really frustrated in early access because I drew out like a farm and buildings were popping up and the terrain wasn't level, but the building like it would auto conform to the building in that specialized industry and it would be elevated. So then I'm looking at the texture being bent to the building you just auto populated, right? Going up to the building. I'm like, oh
oh
my gosh,
yeah.
just let me place my own things.
Yeah, that's also something, the buildings in there. That's true. It sometimes looks adventurous.
That's a good way. Yeah. Like good luck getting there. It's kind of wild.
100%. Well, Slay, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges for new players in City Skylines 2?
I think some of it is just going to be I think it stays the same almost as Cities 1 or what I would have said. And it's like trying to build something that looks maybe the way they dream about. I think a lot of folks go into City Skylines, either one, and they try to build something and their ideas almost turns into building like the massive metropolitan, city like a New York City, right? And I think you don't really gain a lot of experience in making a city and making it look realistic. Like I think a lot of people strive for that, but there's a struggle because you go in there and you make something too big. You kind of overextend what you're trying to do, and it doesn't have any personality. It doesn't feel maybe realistic. It doesn't turn out the way you want. I think it's a very easy thing with cities too, just to zone everything because there's always demand. Pretty
Yeah.
much like stick with education, and you're going to get plenty of demand of everything. And I think that's one thing is like, how do you make your city have personality? How do you give it character? And how do you make something that looks more like a photograph in a way?
Hmm.
And cities 1, we were able to take mods and assets and really bend the game and do some of that. And there's folks that have built vanilla cities and cities 1 and still made really great imagery, even with just visual mods too. If they incorporated those, like look really great. How do you do that right now in cities 2 is more difficult because there's so much going on in the game. There's so much you have to address, and there's so much information flowing. But there's still some foundational elements. Like you can still create things. You have to take your time and you have to play with some of the tools that exist, right? Like utilizing alleyways it can be a lot of fun as sort of suburban roads and rural roads. And then you using pedestrian paths a little bit differently and more frequently can be really helpful in like making areas kind of stand apart. And I do think those are like basic things that can really, really help out with folks that are trying to sort of adapt to cities too. Because I think it's very easy, like I said, to get lost in this world of like building the most massive metropolitan area, but then it not having anything that really feels personal to you and what you're trying to build.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. 100%. All right. So, Slay, what are some of your future content plans for City Skylines 2, if you can share any, of course?
Well, I know we've got 5B1C coming up, 5 Builders, 1 City,
Hmm.
which is around the corner. So I'll be involved in that here in the next very soon, I guess. I need to check the schedule actually. And then I'm trying to find opportunities to do a mix of tutorials, but also kind of a let's play series. And like I mentioned, Cedarburg earlier, which is been a little bit of both because there's been topics as I'm learning the game. I don't feel like I can talk too much about like tutorials. Like I don't really know what to offer in the space yet. I think, maybe into next year, I'll have more opportunities to do things like tutorials, like straight up, like this is how you do this or whatever. Right now, I'm embedding a lot of those helpful pieces of information, things I'm learning along the way into a more of a let's play casual style, which has been a lot of fun and something that doesn't really, burn me out too quickly. I just have to keep coming up with little ideas or little, learning experiences to pass along. So for right now, Cedarburg is a series that I'm going to be focused on for, at least a little bit longer and just trying to create a nice series that folks can kind of like easily approach and watch with digestible information. Beyond that, it'll be probably some more focused tutorials on specific things. Like I did one of the Move It tutorials for Cities 1, and that video, like, that's all it was focused on, and that video's done really well in its lifespan, but, like, you can go to that video and come out of it, and you know how to what everything does in with Move It, and that's sort of where I wanna get with Cities 2. I just think it's gonna take more time.
That sounds really good. Yeah. I agree with you on the tutorial part because I really sat myself down and oh wait, when was that? What is it now? 23 2022 last year. It's not so long ago. I don't know why I had to think about that. So last year, I sat myself down. I did a lot of work. I released 2 videos per week for 1 year to get into the YouTube Partner Program. It worked in that year, so I set
Mhm.
myself a goal. But it was like one Let's Play video on City Skylines, only City Skylines, of course, one Let's Play video and one tutorial video. So I did that consistently over the year. And I feel the same way now as you did, as you just mentioned with City Skylines 2. Like tutorial videos, they do so well, but I'm not so confident that I can crank out these tutorial videos as I was able to for City Skylines 1. So it feels to me like what what kind of value do I have to offer while I'm still learning the game? So I'm trying to find that delicate balance there
Mhm.
of also trying to do some tutorial stuff. But just that's just a side note because I found that very interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's like I know folks had talked about offering more information, even in early access, like, "Can we offer tutorial?" And I think the feedback was, "We'd rather you to kinda do a let's play," and I did not feel in a place where I could do a tutorial. I don't really feel like that now. I mean, I've done a tips video with basic things, and I feel like that's more in line. I think that's very helpful for new players. Stuff that focuses on little tidbits of gameplay and how you can incorporate little things to do certain things, or whatever, but it's kinda hard right now to do, like, a mass tutorial. I don't know what to do. I had, like, an idea for something, and I'm like, "That's not even that's like a 5-minute video." Like, and that's a hard subject to tie into other things. So it's like I've sort of embedding that into the let's play, and so far so good.
Yeah. That seems like a good idea. Just talk about little tips and tricks here while you're doing the Let's Play.
Yeah.
That's also something I liked to do for Cities 1. So I mean, I guess right now I'm still trying to find what I want to do content wise on YouTube. Live streams are a different animal, right? Because live streams
Yeah.
are, I don't know, you just can't compare it. You got feedback, you got constant distractions, which is good. It's fun, but you also like you build an area and it's like, oh, no, let's rearrange the roads. Let's change it. I don't like it. Let's change it. Once you've
Mhm.
recorded it and you've put that video out, it's like go back to the city and next for the next episode, and like, oh, maybe we should redo that. So it's like kind of the gap is like just bigger. It's easier on live streams, I feel like. So I also have to think about where to go in which direction with YouTube content. I also have started a city, like a let's play type of how to start your city type deal,
Yeah.
with the knowledge that I have that I'm comfortable with sharing. I also have like a tips and tricks, but it's like 9 tips, again, small things, proper seawalls, with pedestrian paths and
Mhm.
all that stuff, which is fairly easy once you play around with the road tools a bit. You can do that pretty easily. So just to condense it into a short video. But yeah, also it's something I have to think about, where to go, which direction. But I'm pretty sure I'll get there eventually.
Yeah. I, I've tried to break some of my own rules. Like I wanted everything in my videos to be perfect, laid out precisely. And now I've really tried to relax some things. I've even stressed in Cedarburg, like, hey guys, this is gonna evolve. So I built a bunch of stuff, said early on, all this low density won't be here forever. Like we're gonna tear it up and we're gonna put something else in. And I've slowly started adapting certain spaces in the city build to grow. And that's like a key piece to what I'm trying to build, is like everything is going to grow and adapt as I learn more about the game. And I've tried to frame it that way, and so far I haven't had any crazy feedback. The process is much slower though. I know some folks, with 2 episodes in, they've got like a pretty sizable downtown going on and all this stuff, and I'm still messing around with odds and ends. And but then again, like I think it hopefully gives some folks a perspective and on maybe how to kind of slow down and focus on a little bit of what they're doing in maybe a different light. And I try to use the series not only for like, hey, here's a progress report of where I'm at with the city, but also spreading some inspiration, which I think a lot of us as content creators try to do.
Yeah. So going back to City Skylines 1, how did you first hear about City Skylines? And is there anything or anyone that inspired you to start playing the game?
Let me think. I was a PC gamer in the mid 2000s, mainly FPS games and also SimCity, whichever one was out, 3000, 4000. I don't even remember now. And then I went off to college and I didn't take a computer with me. So I was off PC and I was just on console. And then for several years after college, I was on Mac and I didn't really game on the Mac. And then at some point after college, my dad had, and might still have it somewhere, an old Gateway computer. And we had talked about city builders. And I went and started Googling, and I found out SimCity had released their 2013 or 14 version. And that wasn't super well received. But then also that City Skylines existed. So I actually got it for him to play.
Oh, nice.
So it's something for him to do, but I ended up playing more of it. And SimCity back in the day in the 90s and the early 2000s was something he and I shared as a father son type thing. We both loved it. I remember when I was young, I had a computer in my room that was, so I could learn to type and do those sort of things. And, my mom was kicking my dad off the computer when he was building a city because I was supposed to be asleep or supposed to be getting ready for bed, but I'm standing there helping him build a city. So it was always something that he and I love to talk about and do. And, fast forward, and it was something that we shared for a little bit. And, when I didn't have a PC at the time, so I played it a little bit on his computer, and some more time had passed, and I was watching YouTube, and the person that inspired me was actually Fluxtrance, who does very heavily modded builds a lot of assets. I mean, bends the game to his will, and really enjoyed what he was doing. And I remember sitting there, watching a video and showing my mom, like, dude, look at this. This is crazy, right? Remember when we played SimCity? Like, this is wild.
Look at it
And
now.
yeah, and then so shortly after that, I started streaming a little bit later, and I was streaming from a console, just playing again FPS content and just random stuff, nothing simulation related. And eventually got a PC. And a couple months into playing a PC, I still didn't have City Skylines of my own, so I actually logged into my dad's account, and I started streaming cities for the first few months on my dad's account. And then the rest is kind of history. But yeah, it was. I just did a Google search to see what city builder existed, right? And it was SimCity 2013 or 14, whatever it was. And then City Skylines was recommended because of the condition of SimCity at the time. So that's how I got into it, and probably inspired by, Fluxtrance. I watched a little bit of Corrales, and I'm sure there's other names that I'm blanking out on now that got me started. And because I went straight to modded world. I didn't play vanilla. I just got on the Steam Workshop almost immediately.
Straight to the mods. I mean, sure, why
Yep.
not? That's such a cool story, though. I love that you sharing that experience with your dad. That's so
Yeah.
cool. That is really, really cool. So, what was your first playing experience like? And is there anything special you remember from your first time playing the game?
I think it was exciting to have something with sort of so much dexterity within the tools. All everything that you could do in very early base game cities was so much more than what I remember doing as a kid. So that was exciting. It was almost a little overwhelming, like getting back into it. And I remember making roads and thinking, oh, this looks good. And then you'd come in the next day and you look at it and be like, oh my God, like, ugh, this is terrible. Uh, and then unfortunately, part of it was like trying to dampen take down some of the goals I was setting for myself. Like, I'm going to build like Flux Trance or these YouTubers that have
Yeah.
thousands of hours and all these mods and assets. I remember one time I was downloading all this stuff and the game was started crashing, which go figure. I had no idea what I was doing. So it was a little bit of chaos, I think, at first, but again, it became a game that meant a lot to me, and I think it gave me a spot on the content creation in the community that has helped me along the way, and gave me a little bit of a home, and that is probably what I take away most from Cities 1 as early as when I started playing it, because I think that's when, the first levers were being pulled to direct me to where I am.
That's nice. That's really cool. That's really cool. I like that. So speaking of content creation, was City Skylines related to you starting content? Like, did you start because of the game? Like, I want to stream this game?
No, I thought so. Like I said, I started streaming from a PS4, just using the automatic
Oh,
stuff on the PS4, and
okay.
this was before the console version had come out. And so I didn't even have a PC at the time. I had an iMac because a lot of my work was done like I did video editing and stuff like that. So I had no real reason for a PC. And then it was kind of funny because I'm sitting there and I'm streaming from the PlayStation, which was primarily like Rainbow Six Siege, like, and Rocket League and one or two other games. And then I'm streaming these, and then I got a PC to play PUBG, and that was what I was going to stream. And then I got the PC and I played PUBG, and I hated PUBG.
Oh,
So nothing I was, setting up, I really turned out the way I expected. But so no, quick answer is no. Fast forward about 3 months after I had really kind of gotten into content in a way that was sort of sustainable. That is when I started to really pick up cities. May have been more like 2 months. I started to pick up cities, and I sort of found a spot within the community to start building, and quickly, started networking with some folks in the category, and it's been a mainstay ever since.
very cool. Yeah, I know how, or I also streamed directly from the PlayStation 4. So
Okay.
I know the feeling. Yeah, I know but it was City Skylines. So
It's a time.
yeah, for sure. So is there still some of that old content somewhere on your YouTube channel, or did you
I hope
purge
not.
everything?
I hope not. There's some videos I think of me playing like Rainbow Six and stuff like that, from way back when. There's also some very goofy clips from the first 6 months and stuff like that out there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
there's a little bit of a glimpse, but we don't
Nice.
need to go back that far.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I talk about OG Fortnite like that. Yeah, that was in there too. I can't forget about some Fortnite. So,
I've never played Fortnite actually. So
oh wow,
no, no.
it's okay.
But do you have any memorable moments or achievements from playing cities that you'd like to share?
Oh, I mean, I've created some really cool stuff. I don't know when a city is ever finished. I
Hmm.
think that's like a tough
Good
goal to meet.
point. Yeah.
But I feel like I've created imagery in Cities One, to the I played Cities One at times to the point that I was burnt out, which is tough thing sometimes to manage.
Oh, yeah.
But I think I created some really cool stuff, and imagery and videos and content related to helping teach people, and that's always a nice highlight. I think in terms of achievements, being a part of the community, and I got to do a global build off last year. I got to do the global collab last year. Got early access to Cities 2 this year. Those are all sort of neat kind of things to have. sort of those feel like accomplishments to me. You know, having a partnered YouTube channel around that and a growing community around that channel is nice. So I think there have been content related things that have been really exciting. And then I know that some of the stuff I've created, even though I can't necessarily access it anymore, was really cool. There's been really neat moments where I've built stuff and I've been like really impressed with myself from a creative perspective. And in the cities has always given me an opportunity to sort of unplug from whatever's going on around me, which is, you know, largely my interest in gaming is just to be able to like isolate myself and do X, Y, or Z on a computer with no real concern about what's going on in the real world or what's going on with life and just do something different, kind of break away from that. And cities has long offered that. So
Yeah, I get that 100%. Same here. So yeah, for me, because you touched on an interesting point with when is the city ever finished, right? And that's
mhm.
something like for myself, because that's one of the most memorable moments for me was when I finally got a city up and running off its feet, not in the negative, not swarmed by a poop tsunami or whatever. Like, it was just up and running and steadily growing. And that first city, when that hit 100,000 residents, that moment for me was like, it felt like, oh my God, I did it. It's like, and to this day, still, that's like the point where I myself would consider a city done. If
Mhm.
there's a city's never done, right? If we want to look at
Right.
it that way. But for me, just because of this early experience that I had, it was like my fifth or sixth try with starting a city, and that one it didn't die right away. Like nobody moved out, and it just got up and running off its feet, and that city really grew on me. And I watched tutorials, played alongside tutorials, tried to implement stuff,
Mhm.
and hitting that 100,000 resident milestone was just, for me, it was just amazing. And yeah, to this day, I would consider a city done at 100K. I did that a couple of times in City Skylines 1 on live streams, on YouTube videos. We're like, okay, hit 100,000, and that concludes the city, so to
Yeah.
speak. So, but because of that first city that I was able to get up and running, so that was kind of cool. That was really, really cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what my biggest city ever was. It was very difficult. I mean, obviously with Cities 1 to play it the way I wanted to play it and get what I wanted out of it because I wanted to use all the assets. I wanted to make something that looked realistic and the difficulty then was something like, you know, shape it was designing a city. And how do you ever complete that? Either you're going to run into technical issues with the game and performance or you're going to, you know, burn yourself out, right?
Yeah.
It blows my mind when there's guys, you know, folks that have been playing the game for a year trying to build something or 2 years. Like I tried like the 6 month run or something like that, and it eventually got to a point. It's like I need something different.
I feel
So
that.
it
Yeah.
became, you know, it was usually like, okay, I got about 3 months here, and then I got to move on. So I never really finished anything, but I would build, you know, chunks of something that looked that looked pretty good from certain angles.
Yeah. So the next question I have for you is, I don't know, do we need to talk about it? But it is, which do you prefer, modded or vanilla? Which I'm sure I already know the answer.
You already know the answer. Yeah. Modded, I mean, it's just I want all the options. When I'm
Right.
playing in a role of like I control everything, I want to build it the way I want. I want to design a city more so than anything else. So modded gives me that ability.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. 100%. Can you narrow it down to your top five mods of all time? Is that possible?
Move it. Definitely move it is up there. Great question. Let me think. Find it is somewhere in there. I'm not much of a traffic person. I don't really stress about that as much as I think some would stress because it would be easy to say like TMP and all those, but I did really love Node Controller
Mm,
in Cities One,
yeah.
and Cities Two sort of has some of that, you know, in it. But the ability to sort of blend together intersections and create better, like, you know, expand the intersections so that it would be more smoothly connected was always something that I really loved. What else? Anarchy, like just
Mm,
placing everything was really important to me. And then something that I really started to enjoy, especially at the, you know, tail end of really playing Cities One before Cities Two came out was district styles. I thought was super handy because then I could control more about what residential the houses were popping up where and stuff, which was really important to me because I would detailing and setting up residential spaces was never something I really enjoyed doing that much. I enjoy doing more of like the downtown, midtown areas and stuff like that. So having that as a feature was really nice. And I don't know how many I've even named.
That's five. That's
Oh,
five.
perfect. Great. I'm off the hot seat. Those are, a quick runner up would be I loved Forest Brush. I thought that was fantastic to fill in spaces, to be able to select a mix of trees. That was something that I
Yes.
think was often underrated.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. A good list, by the way. I really like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's really difficult to just get five mods. It is tough. It is tough. But that's why we got that question in here.
Totally. Yeah.
So you've already mentioned Five Builders, One City, 5B1C by Zardas. Quick explanation for anyone listening that does not know what it is. It's essentially City Skylines multiplayer, a collaboration between different builders, a save game pass around where one builder starts on a city on a map and passes that save to the next builder. Thus, it is basically a City Skylines multiplayer. So you were in the 5B1C in City Skylines 1. How did it feel to build with other amazing builders, that collaborative effort?
It was really cool because you got to like, I was never one to really share save files or anything like that. So that was the first opportunity I think I had to like dive into something that someone else had been constructing. So on one hand, you're like, I don't want to mess it up. On the other hand, it's cool to see what other creators, like how they were setting up their areas, what they were building, and be able to sort of manipulate or work like alongside that, adjacent to that. I remember the first video that I did there, I think a couple creators had already like taken part and there was already a downtown made. So I went like one street over from that and built like a really long park, almost like a mall area, with
Yeah.
all the pathing. And it was a very simple episode, but it was kind of like sort of getting my feet wet, in this world. And the really cool part too was the community coming together for that. I think was really exciting for me because I was still trying to figure out like what is my spot here in YouTube and on YouTube. And like you're kind of thinking like, are people going to find me against this list of awesome individuals that are also contributing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And sure enough, they did. From just a professional side, like I grew a bunch in that window of time, and there's a ton of folks that still come and contribute to the channel because they found me through 5B1C. So it's not only an awesome opportunity for growth, and it's exciting because you're working alongside creators you may have even watched on YouTube, but it's also like this opportunity to connect with people and to build adjacent and work together on stuff, which is something you don't really have when it comes to city builders, right? Like that's something everyone's always wanted, but we just don't currently have that sort of accessibility. So that's as close as we can get to multiplayer. So it was really exciting. It was a little bit like, oh, I don't know what to do, but we figured it out and had a lot of fun. I'm excited for this one because I think there's like almost an even more level playing field. We don't have to figure out how to do it in vanilla. Like whereas we had some issues, like there were certain assets a couple of us wanted and stuff like that, and that can be one more layer to kind of dig through. But it was now we have to embark on a new journey, but it's neat. I think as long as you have that opportunity to sort of connect with these folks and then really kind of like, dude, like, okay, you build up to this road and I'm going to take it from here. There's some really exciting opportunities there to build some really neat stuff. And I think the community at large really loves that.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I was lucky enough to be a guest builder in one of
Mhm.
the 5B1C. I think the one you were in as well.
Yeah.
And that was something, it was, first of all, so exciting. So
Yep.
exciting to work or build next to creators that you actually watch, that pop into streams, watch YouTube videos, look up to in a way, and then getting the save file, because the way Zardas does it, right, is like the core members, the core builders go with the first round, and then
Mhm.
the guest builders start trickling in. So there was already like a good chunk of areas built up, and I got the save file. And I remember I just spent like 10, 15, 20 minutes just flying through the city, just looking at everything, because it was so interesting to see the different building styles all on one map, like each in their own pocket, but still, it was so much fun to just go over all of the areas and look, okay, what was built here? What was built here?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
amazing. And then going to my little spot, and it was like, oh my God. And then like you get these fears like, oh my, can I live up to this? Like, it's like, what am I going to do? Are people going to like this or what? Like, but yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
I got so much growth from that, like from the initial first video, the first time I was a guest. It was so amazing. I couldn't believe that people actually liked that. Like, I mean, I'm not creating bad stuff, right? But like, it's always for
All
oneself.
the
It's
self-doubt creeps in.
yeah,
All the struggles.
always, exactly. And I was really excited to see that it resonated with a lot of folks too, and some stuck around to this day. It's super super cool to see and to witness. And yeah, I'm super excited because I'm also a guest in the new one, and
Yep.
that's really amazing. I'm so looking forward to 5B1C and City Skylines 2, the first one. So amazing. And yeah, Zardus, shout outs, because
Yep.
that's really an amazing collaborative effort that Zardus put together here. And yeah, it brings together a lot of good people, a lot of good creators and builders.
100%.
So Slay, we've been recording for over an hour already, and yeah, time is progressing. I'm having so much
Time
fun.
flies.
Yeah, 100%. But I do have one more question for you.
All right.
Do you still play City Skylines for fun or only for content?
A specific one or both of them?
Maybe both. We'll go with both.
Oh, interesting. Cities 1 I haven't opened, besides I needed to record some footage for something. So that Cities 1 right now is only for content, but I'm not really posting content specific to Cities 1, if that makes sense. The Cities 2, I've really been only playing it the last couple weeks for content. But that is not uncommon for me, because I do spend a decent amount of time creating whatever I'm, doing or whatever I'm working on, that I feel like that's the job. That's the workload. And then after that, I move on to other things, because I do have quite a little bit of a variety of games that I tend to dabble in at any given time. So right now it's only for content. I think once we have more stuff in place, whether that's mods and, other content released on the schedule, then I think you'll see that time go up a little bit in terms of just, personal time being on it. But for right now, it's specific to making stuff.
Nice. I understand that 100%.
Yeah, it's I gotta balance everything. I get in those modes. If I go too hard, I'll end up in sort of a burnout area, and then that's not good for me. So
No,
I
no,
try
no,
to
no.
try to keep a good balance of everything.
That's a good idea, yeah, because nobody wants that. No, not at all.
No, no.
All right, so that will conclude the episode. Thank you all so much. Slay, thank you. This was amazing. I had so much fun chatting with
I
you.
enjoyed it.
What is the best way to reach you online? You're on YouTube, Twitch, of course. Slay3K is your handle, is that correct?
You got it. Yeah, both on YouTube, Slay3K, and then on Twitch. We stream a few times a week. Sometimes we dabble in some cities. Otherwise, we might play another simulation game or something wild. It just depends.
So amazing. And your socials will also be linked in the YouTube version of this podcast. But otherwise, thank you all so much for listening. Really, really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. And please stay safe out there. Bye.